The perfectly manicured lawns of the Sterling estate seemed to hold their breath. The late afternoon sun cast long, dramatic shadows across a sea of pastel pink and blue. Inside the grand ballroom, champagne flutes chimed a symphony of forced merriment. This was the day Alexander Sterling III, the titan of tech, and his ethereal wife, Isabella, would reveal the gender of their long-awaited heir. But among the smiling faces and glittering jewels, a storm was brewing. A storm named Juliana, who at that very moment was stepping out of a taxi, her hand resting on a secret of her own. A secret that was about to bring this picture-perfect world crashing down in a torrent of scandal, betrayal, and a revelation so shocking it would leave everyone gasping for air. The Sterling Mansion, a sprawling Palladian masterpiece nestled in the heart of Bel Air, was a monument to new money. Alexander Sterling III, or Alex to the select few he allowed into his orbit, had clawed his way to the zenith of the tech world with a ruthlessness that was as legendary as his innovations. His company, Aura, had revolutionized artificial intelligence. Its sleek, intuitive products becoming ubiquitous in homes across the globe. At 35, he possessed the kind of chiseled good looks and easy charm that made magazine covers and stock prices soar in equal measure. He was, to the world, the epitome of success, a modern-day Midas whose touch turned everything to gold. His wife, Isabella de la Cruz Sterling, was the perfect complement to his ambition. The daughter of a disgraced Argentinian polo dynasty, she possessed a quiet grace and an old-world elegance that money couldn't buy. Her beauty was of the delicate porcelain variety, with wide, expressive doe eyes and a cascade of raven hair that framed a face seemingly untouched by the harsh realities of the world. They had met at a charity gala in Monaco, a whirlwind romance that culminated in a lavish wedding featured in Vogue. To the public, they were the ultimate power couple. Their life was a curated fairy tale of exotic vacations, philanthropic endeavors, and adoring glances captured by the ever-present paparazzi. Their gender reveal party was to be the pinnacle of their social calendar, a meticulously planned affair designed to showcase their wealth and, more importantly, their enduring love. The theme was heaven sent, and the ballroom had been transformed into a celestial wonderland. Clouds of white hydrangeas and baby's breath hung suspended from the ceiling, interspersed with twinkling fairy lights. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their melodies weaving through the polite chatter of Los Angeles's elite. The guest list was a who's who of Hollywood A-listers, tech billionaires, and international socialites. Isabella, draped in a bespoke Dior gown of pale chiffon that skimmed elegantly over her 7-month baby bump, drifted through the room, a serene smile gracing her lips. She exuded a fragile joy, her hand often straying to rest on her stomach, a protective gesture that was both endearing and a little sad. For 5 years, she and Alex had weathered the private storm of infertility. They had endured countless doctor's appointments, invasive procedures, and the crushing disappointment of failed IVF cycles. This pregnancy, a natural miracle when they had all but given up hope, was their salvation. It was the glue that was meant to mend the hairline fractures that had begun to appear in their gilded cage. "You're glowing, darling," cooed Beatrice Vanderbilt, a society doyenne whose face was a testament to the marvels of modern cosmetic surgery. Simply radiant. Isabella's smile widened, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you, Beatrice. We're just so thrilled." Across the room, Alex was holding court. A glass of vintage champagne in hand. He was in his element. A magnetic force field of charisma and power. He laughed at a joke told by a famous comedian. Clapped a studio head on the back. And seamlessly switched to a serious discussion about market caps with a rival tech CEO. He was the sun. And everyone in this room was a planet revolving in his orbit. He caught Isabella's eye and raised his glass to her. His smile a flash of brilliant white. But as she watched him, a familiar unease coiled in her stomach. Lately, his smile seemed a little too bright. His laughter a little too loud. There was a frantic energy about him. A restlessness that even the impending arrival of their child couldn't seem to soothe. The late nights at the office had become more frequent. The hushed phone calls taken in another room more common. When she gently questioned him, he'd brushed it off as stress. The pressure of a new product launch. She had wanted to believe him. Desperately. He adores you. You know, said her best friend, Chloe, sidling up to her. Chloe was a sharp-witted art gallery owner who saw the world in cynical, unflinching strokes. But he's also a man who's used to getting exactly what he wants. And for a long time, the one thing he couldn't have was a child. And now he has one. Isabella said softly, her gaze still fixed on her husband. We have one. Yes, Chloe said, her tone carefully neutral. You do. The tension was palpable. A low hum beneath the symphony of the party. The guests, for all their practiced smiles and effusive compliments, were vultures in couture. They thrived on drama, on the faintest scent of scandal. And the Sterlings, for all their apparent perfection, were a prime target. Whispers followed them like a shadow, whispers of Alex's rumored infidelities, of Isabella's family's financial ruin, of the almost desperate nature of their desire for a child. As the golden hour began to fade, casting long, dramatic shadows across the manicured lawns, the master of ceremonies, a television host with an impossibly white smile, called for everyone's attention. The moment had arrived. A giant, opaque white balloon adorned with gold and silver ribbons was brought to the center of the terrace. Inside, a flurry of pink or blue confetti waited to reveal the secret of the sterling heir. Alex and Isabella stood on either side of the balloon, a single long golden pin in their hands. Alex took the microphone. Thank you all for being here, he began, his voice smooth and confident. This has been a long and eventful journey for Isabella and me. He looked at his wife, his eyes softening with what appeared to be genuine affection. You have been my rock, my everything. And I know you'll be the most incredible mother. Isabella's eyes welled with tears. In that moment, all her doubts seemed to melt away. This was real. He loved her. Their family was about to be complete. And now, Alex continued, his grin widening. Without further ado, is it a boy or a girl? He and Isabella held the pin together, their hands clasped. The crowd held its collective breath. A sea of upturned faces and camera phones. The string quartet reached a crescendo. But just as the pin was about to meet the taut skin of the balloon, a voice, clear and cold as ice, cut through the air. Don't you think you should wait for the other mother? A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Heads swiveled in unison towards the source of the voice. There, standing at the edge of the terrace, framed by the dramatic archway of climbing roses, was a woman who was the antithesis of Isabella. Where Isabella was all soft curves and ethereal grace, this woman was sharp angles and fiery intensity. She was dressed in a simple, form-fitting black dress that did nothing to hide the gentle swell of her own pregnancy. Her fiery red hair was cut in a chic, severe bob, and her emerald green eyes, fixed on Alex, blazed with a mixture of defiance and pain. This was Juliana Vance. Alex froze, the golden pin slipping from his suddenly nerveless fingers. The color drained from his face, leaving his handsome features a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. His gaze darted from Juliana to Isabella. And for a heart-stopping moment, the charming facade of Alexander Sterling III crumbled, revealing the terrified man beneath. Isabella stared, her mind struggling to process the scene. The woman's words echoed in the sudden, deafening silence. The other mother. It was a phrase so ludicrous, so utterly out of place in her carefully constructed world, that she almost laughed. But the look on her husband's face, the raw terror in his eyes, told her this was no joke. Alex? Isabella's voice was a whisper, a fragile thread in the suffocating silence. Who is this woman? But Alex didn't answer. He couldn't. He was a trapped animal caught in the glare of 100 pairs of eyes. Juliana took a step forward, her movements deliberate and unwavering. She ignored the shocked faces of the guests, her focus solely on the man who stood as if turned to stone. "Aren't you going to introduce me, Alex?" she said, her voice laced with a bitter irony. "Or have you forgotten my name already?" A low murmur erupted from the crowd. The vultures were closing in, their eyes alight with a salacious glee. This was better than any Hollywood blockbuster. This was real life, unfolding in all its messy, scandalous glory. Chloe, ever the loyal friend, moved to Isabella's side, her hand a steadying presence on her arm. "Isabella, let's go inside," she urged, her voice low and urgent. But Isabella couldn't move. She was transfixed, a spectator at the demolition of her own life. She looked from Juliana's swollen belly to her own, and a cold, horrifying understanding began to dawn. "Alex," she said again, her voice stronger this time, laced with a dawning fury. "Who is she?" Finally, Alex seemed to find his voice, though it was a strained, unrecognizable version of his usual confident tone. "Juliana," he choked out. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" Juliana let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. "I was under the impression we were celebrating. After all, you told me how much you wanted to be a father. You just failed to mention you already had one on the way." The revelation hit the crowd like a physical blow. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of shocked exclamations. The string quartet had long since fallen silent, their instruments forgotten in their laps. Juliana's gaze shifted to Isabella. And for the first time, a flicker of something other than anger crossed her face. It might have been pity. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." "Find out what?" Isabella's voice was dangerously calm. The initial shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a glacial rage. That my husband. The man I have cried with. Prayed with. The man whose child I am carrying. Her voice broke. But she quickly regained her composure. That he has been lying to me. That he has been sleeping with you. It was more than that. Juliana said quietly, her hand resting on her stomach in a gesture that mirrored Isabella's own. He told me he loved me. He told me you were nothing more than a business arrangement. A pretty face to hang on his arm while he built his empire. Each word was a dagger twisting in Isabella's heart. She looked at Alex, searching for a denial, for any sign that this was all a terrible mistake. But he stood there, mute and ashen-faced, his guilt written all over him. The silence was finally broken by the sharp, authoritative voice of Beatrice Vanderbilt. Well, she declared, her voice dripping with schadenfreude. This is certainly more exciting than confetti. That was it. The spell was broken. The party, so meticulously planned, descended into chaos. Guests began to talk openly, their voices a mixture of shock and delight. Some, with a modicum of decency, began to discreetly take their leave. Others, however, lingered, eager to witness the final, spectacular implosion of the sterling fairy tale. Isabella finally tore her gaze away from Juliana and fixed it on her husband. The love and adoration that had been there moments before had been replaced by a look of such profound betrayal and contempt that he visibly flinched. Get her out of my house, Isabella said, her voice low and venomous. Alex jolted into action, took a step towards Juliana. You need to leave, he said, his voice a harsh whisper. I'm not going anywhere. Juliana shot back, her defiance returning. Not until we've talked about this. About our baby. There is no our baby, Alex hissed, his panic morphing into a desperate anger. There is only my wife and my child. And yet here I am, Juliana said, her voice rising. Pregnant with your child, Alex. And I have the proof to back it up. She reached into her purse and pulled out a sheaf of papers. Paternity test results. Alex. 99.9% conclusive. And text messages. Lots and lots of text messages. Shall I read a few out loud? Perhaps the one where you told me you wished Isabella was more like me. Or the one where you called your unborn child with her. Your corporate merger. Isabella let out a strangled sob. The cruelty of it, the calculated deception, was more than she could bear. She felt the strength leave her legs. And she would have collapsed had Chloe not been there to hold her up. That's enough, Chloe said, her voice a protective snarl. She glared at Alex with undisguised disgust. You've done enough damage for one day. She began to lead Isabella away, back towards the cold, empty expanse of the mansion. But Isabella stopped, turning to face her husband one last time. Her face was tear-streaked, but her eyes were clear and hard. When I first met you, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and rage, I thought you were my prince. But you're not. You're just a coward, hiding behind your money and your lies. She then turned her gaze to Juliana. The two women, So different and yet so inextricably linked by the man who stood between them. Looked at each other. There was no sisterhood in that glance. No shared understanding. Only the cold, hard reality of their situation. "And you," Isabella said, her voice dripping with disdain, "may have his child. But you will never be his wife. You will never have his name. And you will always be the woman who tried to ruin my life." With that, she turned and walked away. Her head held high, leaving behind the wreckage of her party and the ruins of her marriage. The giant white balloon, forgotten in the chaos, still bobbed gently in the breeze. Its secret still locked inside. Pink or blue, it no longer mattered. The future, which had seemed so bright and full of promise just moments before, was now a terrifying, unknowable void. And as the last of the guests beat a hasty retreat, eager to spread the salacious details of the sterling scandal, Alex was left standing alone between the two women who carried his child Rena King deposed in his own kingdom. His empire of lies crumbling around him. The storm had not just arrived. It had made landfall. And the devastation was only just beginning. The days that followed the disastrous gender reveal party were a blur of suffocating silence and a palpable, thick tension that permeated every corner of the Sterling mansion. Isabella had retreated to the East Wing, a part of the house she had always loved for its sun-drenched rooms and views of the rose gardens. Now it felt like a prison, albeit a luxurious one. She communicated with Alex only through her lawyer, a formidable woman named Evelyn Reed, whose sharp suits and even sharper mind were a welcome shield against the emotional onslaught. Alex, for his part, was in a state of controlled implosion. His carefully curated world had been shattered in the most public way imaginable. The scandal was everywhere. The gossip columns, the financial news. Even mainstream media outlets had picked up the story, running it with salacious headlines like "Sterling's double heirs" and "Tech Titan's love triangle explodes." His company's stock, Aura, had taken a significant hit. The board of directors was calling for emergency meetings, and investors were getting nervous. The narrative he had so carefully crafted off the brilliant, stable family man was in tatters. He tried to see Isabella, to talk to her, but he was met with a wall of implacable silence. The household staff, loyal to Isabella, treated him with a cold disdain. Their movements efficient but their eyes filled with judgment. He was a pariah in his own home. Meanwhile, Juliana Vance was not the type of woman to simply disappear. She had rented a chic apartment in Beverly Hills, funded by a generous preliminary settlement from Alex's legal team, a desperate attempt to buy her silence. But Juliana wasn't interested in being silenced. She was, in her own way, as ambitious and calculating as Alex. She had been a rising star at a rival tech firm before she'd been headhunted by Alex himself. Their relationship had begun in the crucible of late-night coding sessions and high-stakes negotiations. He had been drawn to her sharp intellect, her fiery spirit, her refusal to be intimidated by his power. She was his equal in a way, Isabella, with her gentle grace and old-world sensibilities, had never been. Juliana had known about Isabella. Of course. Alex had painted a picture of a loveless marriage, a union of convenience. He had fed her a story of a wife who was cold, emotionally distant, and more interested in the Sterling name and fortune than in the man himself. He had promised her a future, a legitimate one, Once the time was right. The news of Isabella's pregnancy had been a shock. But Alex had assured her it was the result of a final, desperate IVF attempt. A last-ditch effort to maintain the facade of a stable marriage. He had sworn to Juliana that the child would not change their plans. She had, against her better judgment, believed him. The gender reveal party, which she had discovered through a mutual acquaintance, had been the final, brutal confirmation of his betrayal. Now, she was determined to secure her future and the future of her child. She gave a carefully worded exclusive interview to a high-profile journalist, painting herself not as a homewrecker, but as a woman who had been deceived by a powerful, manipulative man. She spoke of her love for Alex, her belief in his promises, and her heartbreak at his betrayal. She was, to a certain segment of the public, a sympathetic figure, a victim of a billionaire's callousness. Back in the sterile silence of the Sterling mansion, Isabella was fighting her own battles. The initial shock and rage had given way to a profound, hollow grief. She replayed every moment of her marriage in her mind, searching for the signs she had missed, the red flags she had willfully ignored, the late nights, the unexplained business trips, the sudden expensive gifts that now felt like offerings of guilt. One evening, as she sat numbly staring at the unopened boxes of baby clothes that filled the nursery, Chloe arrived. A bottle of non-alcoholic sparkling wine in one hand and a grim determination in her eyes. "I did some digging," Chloe said, skipping the pleasantries, "on your new nemesis, Juliana Vance." Isabella flinched at the name. "I don't want to know." "Chloe." "Yes. You do," Chloe insisted, sitting beside her. "You need to know who you're up against. Juliana isn't just some naive girl who fell for a rich man's lies. She was the lead developer on Aura's new Chrysalis project, the project Alex has been touting as the next big thing in AI. Isabella looked at her, a flicker of interest in her tired eyes. "I remember him talking about it. He was obsessed." "Exactly," Chloe said. "According to my sources, Juliana was the brains behind the entire operation. The core of the algorithm was her creation. She left Aura abruptly about 2 months ago, citing personal reasons. Right around the time she would have found out she was pregnant." Isabella finished, a new, chilling thought beginning to form in her mind. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying," Chloe said, her voice low, "that this might not just be about a baby. This could be about business. Billions of dollars of it. Alex didn't just have an affair with some random woman. He had an affair with the one person who could potentially destroy his company." The revelation was a jolt of ice water, snapping Isabella out of her grief-induced stupor. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of her old fire. The de la Cruz family, for all their financial troubles, had not raised a victim. They had raised a survivor. She picked up her phone and made a call. "Evelyn," she said when her lawyer answered. "I want to change our strategy. I don't just want a divorce. I want to fight." The first shot was fired in the form of a legal injunction. Evelyn, acting on Isabella's instructions, filed a motion to freeze a significant portion of Alex's personal and corporate assets pending the divorce settlement. The official reason given was to ensure the financial security of Isabella and her unborn child. The unofficial reason was to squeeze Alex where it hurt the most, his wallet. The move sent shockwaves through the financial world. Aura's stock plummeted further. The board of directors, already on edge, was now in open revolt. Alex, who had always been in absolute control, suddenly found himself fighting a war on two fronts. On one side was Juliana, with her demands for recognition and her intimate knowledge of his company's most valuable secrets. On the other was Isabella, the scorned wife, who was proving to be far more formidable than he had ever imagined. Desperate, Alex arranged a meeting with Juliana at a neutral location, a private suite at the Bel Air Hotel. He arrived to find her not contrite or emotional, but coolly professional. She had her own lawyer with her, a man whose reptilian smile promised a ruthless negotiation. "What do you want, Juliana?" Alex asked, foregoing any pretense of affection. "What I've always wanted, Alex," she replied, her voice even. "To be treated as your equal. I want our child to have your name. I want a formal public acknowledgement of your paternity. And..." She paused, letting the weight of her next words hang in the air. "I want my share of Chrysalis." Alex's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. You signed an NDA. All intellectual property you developed at Aura belongs to the company. An NDA that I can argue was signed under duress, given our personal relationship." Juliana countered smoothly. "I can claim you used your position of power to exploit me, both personally and professionally. I have a very detailed record of our conversations, Alex. Every promise you made, every secret you shared. Do you really want that playing out in a courtroom? Do you think the Aura board would appreciate that?" He was trapped. She had him. And they both knew it. She wasn't just the other woman anymore. She was a threat to the very foundations of his empire. Meanwhile, Isabella was making her own power plays. She started quietly reaching out to the wives of the Aura board members, women she had cultivated friendships with over the years. She didn't speak of the affair. Not directly. Instead, she spoke of her concerns for the company's stability, of Alex's recent erratic behavior. She planted seeds of doubt, skillfully and subtly. She also began to liquidate some of the personal assets she was entitled to and jewelry she had brought into the marriage. She used the money to hire a top-tier private investigator, a grizzled ex-Mossad agent named Zev, with instructions to dig into every aspect of Alex's life, both personal and professional. Zev was thorough. He uncovered a trail of shell corporations and offshore accounts that suggested Alex's financial dealings were not as clean as his public image. But the most explosive discovery was hidden in the details of his company's history. Zev found evidence that Alex had a pattern of identifying brilliant young innovators, absorbing them and their ideas into his company, and then pushing them out once he had what he wanted. Juliana Vance, it seemed, was not the first. But the most shocking secret Zev uncovered was not about Alex. It was about Isabella's own family. He found a hidden connection between the downfall of the De La Cruz Polo dynasty and a series of aggressive, anonymous corporate takeovers. The trail, though faint and cleverly concealed, led back to a holding company with ties to none other than Alexander Sterling III. The realization hit Isabella with the force of a physical blow. Alex hadn't just married her for her beauty and her name. He had married her after orchestrating her family's financial ruin, making her vulnerable, making her dependent on him. Her entire marriage, The foundation of her life for the past 5 years was not just a lie. It was a conquest. She sat in the nursery, the one room in the house that had once represented hope, and felt a cold, hard fury solidify in her heart. The game had changed. This was no longer just about infidelity or a broken heart. This was about retribution. She looked down at her swollen belly, at the life she was carrying. Her life. Her child. A de la Cruz heir. A sterling heir. Yes. But a de la Cruz first. He will not win. She whispered into the silent room. He will not take anything more from us. The stage was set for a battle of epic proportions. It was a triangle of ambition, betrayal, and secrets, with 3 ruthless players and 2 unborn children caught in the middle. Alex, the king, fighting to save his crumbling empire. Juliana, the brilliant usurper, determined to claim her share of the throne. And Isabella, the wronged queen, who had just discovered her own hidden power and a thirst for vengeance that rivaled them both. The war had just begun. The discovery of Alex's role in her family's ruin was a profound and transformative turning point for Isabella. The grief that had crippled her was burned away, cauterized by a white-hot, righteous anger. She was no longer the wronged wife. She was the avenging daughter, the protector of a legacy her husband had sought to destroy. The fight was no longer just for her own future, but for the honor of the de la Cruz name. Armed with Zev's damning report, Isabella understood she needed to change her tactics. A messy public divorce, even a financially ruinous one for Alex, would not be enough. It wouldn't restore her family's name or undo the years of calculated deception. What she wanted was not just separation. She wanted justice. And to get it, she would have to do the unthinkable. She would have to form an alliance with her enemy. Arranging a meeting with Juliana Vance was a delicate operation conducted through back channels by their respective lawyers. They agreed to meet in a private dining room at a discreet, old Hollywood restaurant in Pasadena. A place far from the trendy hotspots of Beverly Hills where they might be recognized. When Juliana walked in, her posture was wary. Her green eyes narrowed with suspicion. The last time they had seen each other, they had been on opposite sides of a battlefield of raw emotion. Now, the air was thick with a different kind of tension, one of cautious, strategic assessment. Isabella, dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress that accentuated her pregnancy, gestured to the chair opposite her. She looked directly at Juliana, her gaze steady and unwavering. "I'm not here to talk about our personal situation," Isabella began, her voice calm and measured. "I'm here to talk about business." Juliana raised a skeptical eyebrow. "What business could we possibly have together?" "Alexander Sterling," Isabella said, the name dropping like a stone between them. "We both want something from him. You want recognition for your child and your work on the Chrysalis project. I want to see him pay for what he's done to me. And to my family." She slid a thin folder across the table. It contained a summarized version of Zev's report, detailing the shell corporations and the timeline that linked Alex to the hostile takeover of her family's assets in Argentina. Juliana read through the pages, her expression shifting from suspicion to shock, and then to a dawning, grudging respect. She looked up at Isabella, seeing her for the first time not as the fragile, aristocratic wife, but as a player in the game. I knew he was ruthless, Juliana said. Her voice a low murmur. But this is another level. He doesn't just defeat his enemies. Juliana, Isabella said, her voice laced with ice. He annihilates them. He takes everything from them and leaves them with nothing. That's what he did to my family. And it's what he will eventually do to you. Once you are no longer useful to him. The truth of Isabella's words resonated with Juliana's own experiences. She remembered Alex's casual dismissal of former colleagues. The way he had taken credit for the work of others. She had always told herself she was different. That their connection was real. But looking at the cold, hard evidence of his treachery, she could no longer afford that delusion. What are you proposing? Juliana asked. Her voice now sharp with focus. An alliance. Isabella stated simply. You have the insider knowledge of Aura. The technical details of Chrysalis. You have the text messages. The proof of his manipulation. I have the evidence of his financial crimes. The key to unraveling his entire financial empire. Separately, we can wound him. Together, we can destroy him. It was a breathtakingly audacious proposal. A partnership born not of friendship, but of a shared enemy. Juliana, a pragmatist at heart, weighed the options. She could continue her own fight, likely securing a hefty settlement and child support. But she would always be the mistress. The other woman. Or she could align herself with Isabella. And in doing so, position herself not as a victim, but as a whistleblower. A key figure in the downfall of a corrupt titan. It was a high-risk, high-reward gamble. What's in it for me? Juliana asked. Her gaze flinty. Everything you've asked for and more. Isabella countered. We expose the Chrysalis fraud. The fact that its core technology is yours. We sue him not just for paternity, but for intellectual property theft. Your name will be cleared. And you will be recognized as the true innovator you are. You will get a settlement so large it will make his head spin. And our children. Isabella's voice softened slightly. Both of our children will be secure. Their futures untangled from his web of lies. She leaned forward. Her eyes locking with Juliana's. He has played us against each other. Counting on us to be blinded by jealousy and emotion. Let's show him how wrong he was. After a long, tense silence, Juliana extended her hand across the table. You have a deal, she said. Their handshake was firm. Businesslike. It was the sealing of an unholy alliance. A pact between the wife and the mistress that would bring the full force of their combined intelligence and fury down upon one man. Meanwhile, Alex was feeling the pressure from all sides. The injunction on his assets was crippling his ability to maneuver. The board was demanding answers about the departure of Juliana Vance and the delays in the Chrysalis launch. He was sleeping at the office, fueled by caffeine and a growing sense of desperation. He had underestimated both women. He had seen Isabella as a beautiful, pliable accessory and Juliana as an exciting but ultimately controllable affair. He had never imagined they would find common ground. His attempts to intimidate Juliana with legal threats had backfired. Her lawyer had responded with a detailed counterclaim for intellectual property theft, attaching a few carefully selected and deeply incriminating text messages as a preview of the evidence they held. Alex's own lawyers had advised him that a court battle would be catastrophic. His focus shifted to Isabella. He still believed he could appeal to her. To the history they shared. To the child they were expecting. He ambushed her at the mansion one afternoon, catching her as she returned from a doctor's appointment. "Isabella. Please," he begged. His usual charm replaced by a raw desperation. "We can't let it end like this. Think of our child. We can still be a family." Isabella looked at him. Her expression unreadable. The man she had once loved now seemed like a stranger. A hollowed-out version of himself. "A family?" she repeated, her voice devoid of emotion. "Was it a family you were thinking of when you systematically destroyed mine? When you bought my father's company for pennies on the dollar, leaving him a broken man?" Alex staggered back as if she had physically struck him. "How? How did you know that? You are not the only one who knows how to acquire information." "Alex," she said coldly. "You built an empire on the ruins of other people's lives. Now you'll see what it's like to have your own life dismantled. Piece by piece." The threat, delivered with such calm certainty, terrified him more than any emotional outburst. He saw in her eyes not the gentle Isabella he had married, but a de la Cruz. A woman with the blood of proud, ruthless Argentinian landowners in her veins. The clock was ticking. Both Isabella and Juliana were now in their third trimester. The impending births added a new layer of urgency to their plan. They wanted Alex dealt with before their children were born. The plan was multi-pronged. Juliana began to leak information about the technical flaws and security vulnerabilities in the Chrysalis project to a select group of tech journalists, creating a narrative of instability and mismanagement at Aura. Simultaneously, Isabella's legal team, using the information from Zev, filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Alex, citing not only infidelity but also the fraudulent acquisition of her family's assets. They also tipped off the SEC about the shell corporations and potential financial misconduct. The combined assault was devastating. Aura's stock went into freefall. Federal investigators began to circle. The board of directors, seeing the writing on the wall, convened an emergency meeting and voted to remove Alex as CEO, citing a loss of confidence and the ongoing legal and ethical scandals. Alex received the news alone in his office, staring out at the city lights of Los Angeles, the city he had conquered. In the space of a few short weeks, he had lost everything: his wife, his company, his reputation. He was a king who had been checkmated by the two queens he had so grievously underestimated. That evening, as if scripted by a master dramatist, Isabella went into labor. Chloe rushed her to the hospital, fielding calls from a frantic Alex who had heard the news. Isabella gave strict instructions that he was not to be allowed in the room. As she endured the pains of labor, her thoughts were not on Alex, but on the future. A few hours later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She looked at his tiny, perfect face, a swirl of dark hair on his head, and saw not a Sterling, but a de la Cruz. She named him Santiago, after her grandfather. In a different wing of the same hospital, another drama was unfolding. Juliana Vance had also gone into labor. A week earlier than expected, she gave birth to a baby girl, a fiery little thing with a tuft of red hair. The news reached Alex via a text message from Juliana's lawyer. He was a father. Twice. In the same night. He stood in the sterile, Impersonal hallway of the hospital. Caught between two doors. Behind one was Isabella, the wife he had betrayed, with their son, Santiago. Behind the other was Juliana, the mistress who had helped orchestrate his downfall, with their daughter. He had wanted a legacy, an heir to his empire. Now he had two. But the empire was gone. He was a king without a kingdom, a father without a family. The dramatic climax of his life had arrived not with the pop of a confetti-filled balloon, but with the simultaneous cries of two newborns. Each one a testament to his ambition, his deception, and his ultimate, ruinous downfall. The consequences of his actions had been delivered. With interest. 6 months had passed since the night of the twin births. A night that had irrevocably altered the landscape of their lives. The LA sun. Once a symbol of the golden promise of the Sterling's future, now simply illuminated the new world order they had all forged from the wreckage. Isabella de la Cruz stood at the head of a polished mahogany boardroom table. The room was not in the sterile glass and steel monolith of Aura, but in a gracefully restored historic building in downtown Los Angeles. The brass plate on the door read, the De La Cruz Foundation. She was no longer the ethereal, fragile wife. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant, severe chignon, and she wore a tailored suit of emerald green, a color that spoke of money, power, and unapologetic self-possession. The De La Cruz fire, so long banked and suppressed, now burned brightly in her eyes. Before her sat a team of lawyers and financial advisors. They were discussing the final stages of the asset liquidation from her divorce settlement and the strategic reinvestment into her foundation, whose mission was to support and fund female entrepreneurs, particularly those in tech. It was a delicious irony she savored every single day. She was using Alex's money to fund the very women he would have likely exploited or underestimated. The final transfer from the Aura Dissolution Fund has been processed. Ms. De La Cruz, said Evelyn Reed, her lawyer, who now sat on the foundation's board. The settlement is complete. Isabella nodded. A serene, almost predatory calm about her. And Mr. Sterling. He has vacated the Bel Air property. It is officially yours to sell or retain as you wish. He has been compliant. Compliant was one word for it. Decimated was another. Alex Sterling was a ghost haunting the city he once ruled. He lived in a rented luxury condo in Century City, a place with stunning views and an utterly soulless atmosphere. The fawning assistants and powerful allies were gone, replaced by a rotating team of lawyers managing the fallout from SEC investigations and shareholder lawsuits. The tabloids, having exhausted the initial scandal, now ran pathetic photos of him jogging alone or eating by himself at nondescript cafes. He had tried, through legal channels, to arrange visitation with his son. Isabella had countered with a demand for a full psychological evaluation and supervised-only visitation to be held at a neutral location of her choosing. He had, so far, not pursued it further. His empire was a ruin. His name was a punchline. His only remaining power lay in the DNA he had passed on to 2 children he was not allowed to see. Later that week, Isabella drove her black Range Rover not to the mansion in Bel Air, which she was in the process of selling, but to a chic, modern house in the Pacific Palisades. This was Juliana Vance's new home, purchased with the massive intellectual property settlement she had won from the carcass of Aura. Juliana opened the door herself, holding a baby with a shock of bright red hair. Lily. She looked different, too. The sharp, defiant edges had softened. Motherhood and victory suited her. Her new company, Phoenix A&M, for its rise from the ashes of Aura, had just secured its first round of venture funding. The tech world, eager for a story of female vindication, had embraced her as a returning hero. Their alliance, born of mutual necessity, had evolved into something more complex. It wasn't friendship. Not in the traditional sense. It was a partnership forged in fire. A bond of shared experience that no one else on Earth could possibly understand. They were the sole members of an exclusive club. He called. Juliana said as she led Isabella through the bright, airy home to a patio overlooking the ocean. In a playpen on the grass, Santiago, with his dark hair and Isabella's wide, serious eyes, was sitting up, watching his half-sister with placid curiosity. It was the children's second time meeting. Isabella's posture stiffened slightly. Alex? Yes. He sounded broken. Juliana said, her tone factual, not sympathetic. He wanted to talk about Lily. About a trust fund. About seeing her. What did you tell him? Isabella asked, picking Santiago up and holding him close. The same thing we agreed upon. All communication goes through our lawyers. All financial provisions will be handled by the foundation. No direct contact. Juliana looked at Isabella. Her green eyes clear and direct. He is their biological father. Isabella. One day, they will ask about him. This was the topic they had circled for months. The final, most important piece of their strategy, the future of their children. And we will tell them the truth. Isabella said. Her voice firm. A version of the truth they can understand. We will tell them that their father was a brilliant but flawed man. We will tell them that he made mistakes that made it impossible for us to be a family with him. But we will not lie. And we will not let them inherit his war. And each other? Juliana asked quietly, looking at the two infants who were now reaching for the same brightly colored teething ring. They will know they are brother and sister. Isabella stated. A finality in her voice that left no room for debate. They will be raised with that knowledge. It is the one good thing that came from all of this. They have each other. We will not let his failure take that away from them. It was a radical decision, to embrace the messy, complicated truth rather than hide from it. To build a new kind of family. One helmed by two single mothers who had once been rivals. It was their ultimate victory. Their final act of control over the narrative Alex had tried to write for them. Juliana nodded. A slow smile spreading across her face. I had my lawyers draft a final joint press release. I want you to look at it. She handed Isabella a tablet. The statement was a masterpiece of public relations. It announced the finalization of their respective legal actions against Alex Sterling and Aura. It detailed the establishment of the De La Cruz Foundation and Phoenix AI. It spoke of moving forward. Of focusing on their children and their new ventures. And it ended with a line that was both elegant and devastatingly final. We look forward to raising our children in an environment of honesty, mutual respect, and female solidarity. We consider this matter closed and will be making no further public comment. It didn't just slam the door on Alex Sterling. It locked it. Threw away the key. and built a new house in front of it. It defined them not as his wife and his mistress, but as collaborators, partners, and victors. Isabella handed the tablet back. It's perfect. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Two queens surveying their new, hard-won kingdom. The Pacific Ocean glittered before them, vast and full of possibility. On the lawn, Santiago finally managed to grasp the teething ring and, without hesitation, he offered it to Lily. She took it. And for a moment, their hands touched. A new legacy had begun. Not one of power and money built on lies, but one of resilience forged in betrayal. A story that would be told not by the fallen king, but by the two women who had taken his crown and melted it down to build a future of their own design. The fallout from that fateful night at the hospital was swift and brutal. Stripped of his CEO title and facing a mountain of legal battles, Alex Sterling's empire crumbled. His carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of lies and ruthless ambition, was now a public spectacle of ruin. But this story isn't just about the downfall of a millionaire. It's about the unexpected, formidable alliance between the two women he wronged. Isabella, with her son Santiago, fought and reclaimed her family's honor, proving that true strength often lies dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Juliana, with her daughter Lily, secured her rightful place as a brilliant innovator, refusing to be a footnote in a powerful man's scandalous history. They rewrote their own narratives, not as victims, but as architects of their own destinies. Their story is a powerful reminder that the most compelling dramas are not played out on screen, but in the intricate, often treacherous landscape of human relationships. If you were captivated by this story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate vindication, please hit that like button and share it with someone who loves a story where the queens finally checkmate the king. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama that's more gripping than any novel. Let us know in the comments below, who do you think was the ultimate winner in this complex saga?